Thank you all for coming to hear about the power of empowerment. I'd like to begin by just saying that I'm not sure that empowerment is our default. And I know it isn't mine. And I want to talk about Amy and Raven, who I know are here. Classic example, at the food truck event, Amy and Raven were sitting on the grass, and I immediately said, "Do you need a chair?" As if they were children. It kind of makes me a fraud that I took away empowering you to know where you wanted to sit, but at least I recognize what I did. Doing a good bit of management consulting, I often asked managers if they knew what is the opposite of empowerment. Any thoughts on the opposite? It's actually enfeeblement. And enfeeblement, unfortunately, lasts a very long time. Once somebody has been enfeebled, they're pretty much enfeebled for good. Empowerment has a lot of biblical reference, and it is almost from early on in the Bible with the Ten Commandments, when God says, "Don't steal." And if I'm not empowering somebody to make their own decision to do the right thing, I've stolen that decision and that feeling from them. Thou shalt not covet. Owning a task or an accomplishment that really rightfully belongs to another is enfeebling, and it is against our 10 commandments. Then we get to the New Testament. When Jesus saw the blind man and asked him, "What may I do for you?" he didn't just restore that man's sight, he restored that man's dignity, his agency, in asking, "Please help me see." It was obvious what the man needed, but Jesus restored more than just his sight to him. He also gave his disciples parables. He didn't answer them. He gave them parables to figure it out all by themselves. He talked often of dying to oneself. And when I empower somebody else, I am dying to myself, which is real servant leadership. He also encouraged those guys on the road to Emmaus to share where they were so that Jesus knew where to meet them. He empowered them to share really where they were. So here's a story my friends at EFM have heard before. When I was 34 years old, as a young, smart, on top of the world, had all the answer, climbing the corporate ladder, manager, my brother was lost flying over the Pacific. I grew up in an aviation family. Flying was just a love of everybody in the family. And my brother flew and loved to fly and ended up owning 4 DC-3s. I don't know if you know that good old DC-3, that World War II rugged airplane. And so he had a license to fly a DC-3. And a man who owned one, who flew back and forth to Hawaii to ferry beef from Hawaii, believe it or not. His pilot didn't show up. He said, "I need a pilot to fly my DC-3, and I can picture my brother. Oh, pick me. I'll fly. So off they went, and the navigation equipment was faulty, and they never found the islands. And I was living in Philadelphia at the time. My parents were in Phoenix. My dad was a chief pilot for Western Airlines, had been flying his whole life. And so I kind of knew what I was facing. So I flew to Phoenix to be with my parents to see if they had found any sign of my brother at all. And Dad was responsible for working with the Coast Guard to call off the search. So off we went to Los Angeles. We had a really big, wonderful memorial service for my brother Jim. After the service, we all hung out at a bar outside of LAX airport, and they're telling stories, laughing, crying. And there was a young man standing against the wall, just sobbing, that shoulder shrugging sob. And I thought, wow, young man. So I said, are you okay? And he said, I'm going to be fine, but I need to tell you about your brother. Your dad lost a man who shared a love of flying with him, and that's hard for your dad. Your mother lost a son. Mothers aren't supposed to lose sons. You lost your big brother, your hero big brother. But we lost a man who gave us the best gift one man can give another. Your brother gave us the best of ourselves. Your brother did not teach me how to fly. Your brother gave me flight. It was truly a life-changing moment. And from that time, giving flight will always be my personal mission. And I have some stories with some examples of giving flight. When I got out of graduate school at the tender age of 46, I worked in the clerk's office in the federal district court in Tucson. And this was a clerk's office filled with women, and they were suffering from just horrible performance. They were wasting time with absolute world-class cattiness. It was in the sewer, morale. It was a horrible place to work. Morale usually doesn't have an external source. It can. High morale almost always has an internal source. High morale comes from inside of us. So we had a long series of very small meetings, little group meetings, talking about what was going on here. What's happening? What's happening in this office that is just making you little catty wenches? And we found the common ground, and it was negative self-image. Nobody felt good about themselves. They were generally overweight, sedentary, and all of those side effects of what happens. And they just did not feel good about themselves and decided that they wanted to feel better. This was their decision. So I found this coolest, fun, challenging, empowering program that we all worked together. We divided into teams. And after 10 months, 16 of us lost 1,000 pounds. Whoa. And a lot of the husbands lost that much as well. That's an average of 62 pounds each. It was really a remarkable thing. Mild exercise was a part of it. We had little prizes along the way. And they supported one another. And it was an instant turnaround, but they figured out themselves that they just didn't feel good inside, and they wanted to do that. And it made a huge difference. We were actually featured in the local newspaper, and it resulted in a number of other organizations who called and wanted to follow the same program. So that was one story of making them the best those clerks could be. My next job was as the county manager in Teton County, Wyoming. And I want to tell you, the concentration of testosterone is no higher than it is in a fire department, especially volunteer firefighters. Oh my goodness, that is a fraternity. That is a close fraternity. that can end up being very mean-spirited to people on the outside and intractable. But they're not mean in their hearts. They are obviously wonderful people who serve others. So here's a little background with the firefighters. The hospital in Jackson, Wyoming is at the far east end of the valley. And there are population centers across the Snake River, way down the valley, over here and over here. And the hospital is here. So at any time, and that's where the ambulances were based. So our EMTs, we had our emergency medical technicians, and the ambulance had a response time. It's Amy will cringe when she hears this, anybody in the medical profession. Their response time averaged 40 minutes. That doesn't work. We had fire stations where all the population centers are. So we had these fire stations around. We could respond to a fire in 3 minutes. We could respond to a heart attack in 40 minutes. Kind of a head scratcher. So the EMTs approached us. It was a nonprofit organization. They approached us to become a part of the county and see if they could park an ambulance at a fire station. It was just horrible. It was a battle of the EMTs versus the firefighters, which just does not make sense. While the Board of County Commissioners and I had the authority to merge them, it would have ended up a failure always. They needed to understand the importance of merging themselves. So it was important to identify what they had in common and what the big differences were. What were the big obstacles that we needed to acknowledge and overcome? The differences were that the firefighters are very unique in that fraternal bond because they respond in circumstances where they hold each other's lives in their hands. They're protecting that structure, but they're protecting their brothers. And that was a big thing for them to let somebody else into the house where they live who doesn't belong to that fraternity. And yet, they are passionate about their community. They're passionate about helping others in times of crisis, dedicate themselves to intense training, and they need to perform flawlessly as a team. They had that in common with the EMTs. I will tell you that it took about 2.5 years of really hard, ugly, brutal work. But we have the ambulances now in the firehouses. Some of the volunteer firefighters left. We got so many more, way more joined than left, and some are combined and elevated the EMTs into paramedics. It was successful all the way around. It took a long time and a lot of hard work. And a little personal anecdote, and I'll tear up with this one too. Several years later, I was at St. John's Episcopal Church doing altar guild, which is very close to St. John's Hospital, that hospital way, and conveniently located. And I got a call that my husband had collapsed in the driveway. So I raced home. The ambulances were already there. The sheriff's department was there. And they had responded. They're resuscitating. We end up in the emergency room, and I am standing next to this beautiful young paramedic in the emergency room. And she looked at me and said, "You're Jan Friedlund, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." "And you're the one who merged the fire and EMS departments, aren't you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." I'm shorter and bruised, but yes, that's me. And she took a deep breath, got very teary, and said, we would not have been able to be there had it not been for your leadership. And we hope that this is our way of thanking you. It was a good moment for me. My dear husband didn't make it, but we had 3 days to gather the family, so it was a big thanks. Another story is drawing on St. Paul's several messages that he has about the value of our many and varied gifts. Another example is the collaboration of all of our early childhood education providers in Teton County. We gathered together, nonprofits, public servants, et cetera, and for-profit providers who otherwise would have competed for business. And we gathered, signed a collaborative agreement to develop a ballot initiative for voter approval to build new early childhood education centers. Childcare has been a crisis, not just in this community, it's a crisis around the nation and has been for years. So as I gathered this group and then took notes, I was the scribe, and I watched and listened as strengths, areas of expertise, everybody's passions and dreams evolved into one single paragraph that we could put on the ballot. It passed with $6 million. We got that $6 million, leveraged it with the state, got another $3 million, and built one new and rebuilt an old child care center, which now has children in it, and the children are all together. We have special needs children, Head Start children, and tuition-based children, all sharing these facilities together. And we merged many of the organizations to now what is called the Children's Learning Center that serves 600 children in our community. Yes. As a manager of managers, empowering others was actually my overarching expectation of the department heads who reported to me. We have a 360-degree performance evaluation tool that I'm happy to share with anybody. It includes 2 questions that the direct reports of these department managers respond about their managers, about their bosses. And those department head managers were asked those same questions to respond about my leadership. And the 2 questions are you able to work independently and without fear of making a mistake? We also said, what are your suggestions? Not do you have any, because we all have suggestions. What are your suggestions for improvements for our department? And we took those and read those really carefully. But that was an expectation that I'm not just going to empower my department heads. They need to empower everyone who reports to them. Empowering others occasionally extended to terminating employees. And it was not only not difficult for me, actually, firing people was kind of fun. Because it usually felt more like a gift to that employee. And my line was, somebody sitting in my office, I would say, I don't really think you're happy. I know I'm not happy, but I don't think you're happy, and your performance shows that. So I am inviting you to find your happiness elsewhere today. You can There sits my little counterpart over there. If you don't know, Lori Cadridge and I worked together many years ago. She was a city manager in Cody, Wyoming, as I was a county manager in Teton County, Wyoming. And so as local government managers in the little state of Wyoming, we got to spend a lot of time together. 25 years. More recently, as this little old grandmother, which I have to say is the best job I've ever had, I've had several occasions to coach younger mothers, including my darling daughter-in-law, to understand that giving some specific direction to capable young adults about when and how to be generous, how to be kind, how to be responsible, etc., is actually stealing that decision from them. They are usually capable of making that. And I have stolen then, or somebody has stolen from them, that good feeling of making the right decision. That really wonderful feeling of saying that. And we're so attuned to helping, like, do you need a chair? That subconsciously, the what a good person am I gets in the way of empowering others. And I kind of think it could be classified as petty theft. I'm currently working at CSU, and I love this job with these kids. And the smallest act of giving agency, I think, can be a blessing. In my new job, when new students, young, and many from other countries, you're familiar with these kids, walk through the door with a mixture of anxiety, bordering on panic, and a little humiliation or embarrassment written all over their faces to ask a simple question: where's classroom B103? They're so grateful for any help, and I think a little bit relieved and empowered, because I always assure them that the question that they've just asked is the very reason their tuition dollars are paying my salary. I'm here because you're paying me to be here to help you. So I have seen how much power there is as we walk side by side, empowering and lifting others and handing them along as Christ modeled and as he continues to walk beside us. Any questions or comments?
I was just going to say I've been working with Jan as a senior warden at St. Paul's for 2 years now, and I can tell you what that kind of leadership means to me as a priest, because she's empowering all the time. I see her do this in every email. When I might not be the one that's the recipient, but that is your nature. That is what you do, and I can see that coming out of your faith.
Thank you.
Exemplified, and it has meant the world to me.
Thank you, Felicia.
Well, this is pretty basic, but what was the name of that weight program?
I don't know. I knew that I should have found that, but that was 30 years ago, Betsy. I have no idea. What we did, it was really fun, because people could like walk a mile, and that would earn them like 10 miles along this map. We circumnavigated the globe twice, because a little weightlifting or push-ups, we had this little scale, and I didn't make this up. I found this program that I would go 25 miles if I'd done 5 push-ups or something. And then we had little prizes. When we got to Paris, we all got little Eiffel Towers. When we got to Rome, we got other stuff. We had all of these little prizes, and we needed to make it last a long time, because you can lose weight really quickly, and it has to be a lifestyle. but I wish I knew.
Sounds fun. It sounds like a group, and so you're all working together. It's, I don't know, these Fitbits, oh yay, but you're still by yourself.
Yeah. And the thing that was important about that is they just all of a sudden realized we don't feel good. We're nasty to one another because we don't feel good. And why don't you feel good? Well, I'm fat. I don't get enough exercise. All of those things. Well, let's do that together. It was really, it's a good thing. A couple of books I brought. Good to Great, Jim Collins, fabulous book. Best thing in here that he talks about, well, among many other things, is the mirror and the window. A good manager has a mirror. When things go wrong, they shine and own things went wrong and blame me. When things go well, they look out the window, and it's the reason Jim did that. Jim did that. Robert did that. So it's that kind of, and Good to Great is about 15 sustainable, successful businesses. John Williams and I both gave this book when Felicia asked for a good management book. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team talks a good bit about ego, dying to ourselves. We have to do that, die to yourself. So this talks about that. Lead Yourself First, I found really valuable because it talks about leaders needing solitude. We need to just recharge ourselves. We need a Sabbath day. We need this wonderful solitude. My go-to book for everything is Getting to Yes. It's a very old book. And I use it for a number of things. It talks about how we can just negotiate by giving people the power to negotiate with us instead of against us. This is on my shelf to read, and it's been for a while. Have you read it?
There's a new one too, Jan, on the dysfunctions. He's changed his approach to that now.
Really?
And doesn't
can you all hear?
Doesn't call it dysfunctions. He calls them advantages to building the team. So he's kind of flipped the language because he feels it's more powerful. But we picked that one up in the office.
I think Carol was waiting.
Couldn't hear. Oh, hear that.
Couldn't hear. The author of The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team has written a new one called The Five Advantages of Something, that kind of flips his little pyramid, maybe, that he thinks is even more powerful. The Lives of Moral Leadership I have not read yet, but I was really compelled when I read the introduction that he talks about handing one another along. I can just hand you along. I'm not always going to be here. You need to be empowered as I'm handing you along. I also read that there is a study done at Colorado State University. Go Cam the Ram. That how to make work meaningful. And 2 of the 6 points that they found was recognize and nurture potential. Identify and nurture an employee's unique strength and capability, and provide a custom opportunity for them to use their unique gift. The other one is give employees freedom. Enfeebling is asking Jim to do a task for me and then looking over his shoulder, because you're the one who said micromanagement. Looking over Jim's shoulder, helping him along the way, do this. Or if Jim should make a mistake, criticizing him for that mistake, instead of thinking, well, this is a great coaching opportunity. Let's figure out what would have been better together. So give employees freedom, grant autonomy and decision-making power over how they do their work. It feel more like a sermon? Okay.
A conversation.
A conversation. Any other questions or? Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you. I guess at the very beginning when you said that about well, I translated it to one of the skills that I learned early on in one of the management schools I went through, and that was leave out the obvious. So many times as a manager, you want to micromanage and tell them every detail of what to do and how to do it, and it's much more empowering to just at least leave out the obvious stuff because they're going to see that too.
That's great. Another great technique. Leave out the obvious. Any other examples? I do have to say that a number of people have heard that story about my brother, but I walked away from that bar an entirely different person than I walked in. It made that much difference. And who knows where that young man is today? Who knows what words we say that will have that kind of an impact on somebody else?
How old was you?
He was 36.
Well, thank you for providing us such a concrete, practical examples of how to empower people and how that is what Christ wants us to do for each other. Very practical. Thank you.
And yeah, and modeled it. Every step of the way, he modeled that. Every time I read any of scripture, I think, today, he modeled grace. It's not how to, it's flight. Any questions from Amy, Raven, Elaine, Carol? Charlotte. Oh,
She showed up on the screen.
No, I just thank you very much, Jen.
Oh, you're muted, Charlotte.
Yeah. I think there's definitely some modeling that has been.
Oh, we can't. I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Charlotte.
Well, that's okay. I unmuted myself. Mike?
Try again. Oh.
Can I make a comment? Totally. But I'm empowering you all to bring your own cups to the table.
Thanks,
Charles. One reason I get a clean pair of cups. Don't bring your own cups. Right now, you'll get washed.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Bring your cup. Thank you. I'm gonna